We have a guest here in our Abuja studios, and we're going to be jumping right away to our paper review segment. Mr. Nurudeen Abdallah, who is the editor of 21st Century Chronicle and former assistant editor of Daily Trust, joins us here in our Abuja studios. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Good morning, thank you.
Well, I was making, a whole meal about the rain that fell in Abuja. I hope it didn't affect you in any way.
No.
Well, let's start with what the dailies are saying this morning. And Daily Trust has this one. Energy, food prices push inflation to 17-year high. That's what we have. Inflation figures, new inflation figures have just been released now. And it looks like it's not abating or easing at all. How is this affecting, businesses, for instance, and maybe the personal income of people that you know, and maybe even yourself?
Yes, I think the government agency is just confirming what many Nigerians know. Mm-hmm. In Abuja here, for instance, in January, February this year, the diesel, for instance, was about 300 plus per liter. Mm-hmm. But now it's over 700. So you see small businesses, barber shop, the market women, it is grossly affecting them. Don't even talk about the food prices. Everything is going to the roofs. So it's just a confirmation of what many Nigerians are going through daily.
Well, we know the government has been trying to do something about it. They've been quite worried about inflation and inflationary pressures. But it looks like we're yet to really feel the results of whatever it is that they're doing. I know that, there's been some move, especially around the foreign exchange, which is another item that has been affecting inflationary pressures. Do you think that the moves we saw, especially by Bureau de Change operators here in Abuja, did it have any effect, or maybe we're yet to just see it? Do you think it's still going to come through before the end of the year?
We hope so, actually. But I think the problem is, it looks like not a long-lasting measure. Some DSS operatives and EFCC, we are the Zone 4 in Wusset, for instance, where the exchange, black markets take place. But I think maybe that's a short measure. What Nigerians need are actually a concrete measure that will last the test of time. You remember the president has to even inaugurate a committee that will look into the influence, the rising cost of food items in the country. I think it was chaired by Vice President Yemi Osibanjo, but nothing we heard from it since 2 years after it was. So maybe we need concrete measures that will tackle this thing, maybe, and slow the trend so that Nigerians can breathe.
It's really a lot, to be honest. But you also have a number of other stories here. Why we pioneered non-interest banking, that's from Jaiz Bank chairman. Kenyan poll, quite a lot to chew on there. Protest, jubilation, trail Ruto's victory. Page 26 will give you details. And you also have this last story. My only agenda is to serve Nigerians. That's from Atiku. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust newspapers.
And flip to the Nigerian News Direct, which has the same story as the Daily Trust has, but it has its own riders that are unique to it. Outrage over 17 years, highest inflation rate of 19.64%. Stories on page 4. Political leadership reason for continuous increase, ascribed to Oyedokun. Current administration has brought retrogressive policies on economy's governance, according to Odewale. FG must restudy concept paper of Operation Feed the Nation to induce investors. That, Mr. Abdullah, is what I would like you to speak to. What is it? I mean, we've been talking for as far back as I can remember about returning to agriculture. Operation Feed the Nation was a concept of the military in, I think, 1977, 78 or thereabout. And here someone is proposing that we should restudy it. Do you think it's something that we need to go back to restart agriculture?
Yes, because if you look at the scenario now, almost every government comes with one policy or the other. We had Operation Feed the Nation, Juari Shagari, the IBB, all the military agents up to the present administration, where we have the anchor borrowers, for instance. The CBN is saying that over 1 trillion naira has been disbursed as loans to farmers in the last 6 years. But fundamentally, apart from the funding aspect of it, or renaming the policy, there are certain variables that the federal government has to look into. One is that of security. In this part of the country, for instance, we talk about the Northwest, we talk about some parts of the North Central, farmers can't even go to farm. You know, in places like Zamfara, Sokoto, locals have to even pay ransom to go and plant, and even during harvest, they have to pay money to some bandit kingpins to go and harvest their clothes. Not to talk about the mass displacement. There is now, if you look at what is happening, most of the capital cities in the Northwest and some part of the North Central, people are trooping from the villages to the capital city. So the issue of agriculture is grossly affected.
Okay.
So I think it is more than changing the name or reverting to Operation Feed the Nation or discarding anchor borrows or what have you. There are certain variables that the federal government has to look into it. First and foremost, security. People need to be scared to go to farm.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Well, there's so many other stories on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning, but I'll take just one. Is this a result of inflation? ASU strike 6 months after businesses shut down on varsity campuses. That they even lasted up to 6 months is something cheering. That's the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
But the Nigerian Tribune chose a different path with its big story this morning, and it goes thus. I have not resigned. I have 4-year mandate. That's attributed to the national chairman of the PDP. Let's take a look at the riders. Atiku, Wike, Camps failed to hold reconciliation meeting. Atiku in fresh move to galvanize support from the Southwest. And lastly, from the riders, we have to receive defecting SDP members in Ekiti. And that's been denied by the leader of the party in Ekiti State, former Governor Segun Oni, who was a candidate in the just concluded election. Now, you can't just do a double take on the continuing internal wranglings in the People's Democratic Party. Mr. Abdallah, I'd like you to speak to this. Many had said that, look, the demands made by the governor of Rivers State, to have the issues resolved were a bit extreme. Now, the national chairman is responding, saying, look, I will run my full tenure. How are you weighing in on the PDP crisis, particularly as it affects, the party's chances, or perhaps it does not, ahead of the general elections in 2023?
I think the PDP crisis is not new if you look at the political history, particularly of most of the political parties. They had the same issue even in 2015. They had the same issue in 2019. And from the way things are going, the issues may be resolved before election. And, the election takes place February next year. They have more than 5 months to resolve all the differences. I think maybe what Governor Wike is saying, he's rising his text so that, he will be comfortable when the Atiku come to the table for dialogue. So it is expected. And if you look at the scenario, the election is not happening next month or in the next 2 months. It's happening 5 or 6 months after. So they have a long time to resolve all these differences, and go to election. And with the way things are happening, I think the opposition party will not allow their individual differences, to affect their chances in the next election. Because if you look at the APC and the PDP candidate, for instance, this is his almost last battle, so to say. No.
Interesting line of thought there. Like others, you also think that he's negotiating, to give himself a place of strength ahead of the general election, and should PDP win that presidential election in 2023. But let's go above the nameplate and look at just one or two more stories. Still on the inflation story, inflation rate rises to 19.64%, highest in 17 years, and all the other indicators too experienced an increase. Food inflation in particular. In the past there was the Price Control Board. While it's understandable to have food crops, having an increase, across board because of the high cost of transportation from one part of the country to the other, there are some other staples that do not necessarily require transportation. But in Nigeria, they say that everything that goes up, hardly comes down. Do you agree that this seeming helplessness should remain, or is there a way that perhaps the Price Control Board of the past can be returned to check prices of staples that do not necessarily have to go up?
Yes, my thinking is this: it will be difficult to have those price control board that we have in those days. Mostly it was during the military dictatorship. Now, I think the forces of demand and supply determine the prices, whereas the economy, the way those in power, run it, determine the CPI, that is the Consumer Price Index, the per capita of the public. But bringing those boards now, I don't think it will not solve the problem. So many things are accumulated to take us where we are today. The borders were closed. You remember, look at in the last 6 years, how much was 50 kg of rice? It was about 10,000. But now, it's more than 30,000. 35 in some parts of the country. So I think instead of using that draconian measure, we have to look at the economic variables. The experts need to advise the government. The government must take economy very serious. And unfortunately, that was what the present administration did not do at the beginning of since they came in 2015. It took more than 2 or 3 years for the president to appoint an economic advisor. Even when he did, he domiciled the economic advisor in the office of the vice president. He had an economic team. Well, last did they meet? So all these things happen. All these things need to be put into consideration to stabilize the system. But bringing one rule that was used, or policy during military, may have very insignificant impact in the present situation.
Yeah, indeed, there are quite a number of other stories on the front page of the Tribune. I'll just take this and we'll be done with the Tribune. Experts decry Nigeria's penchant for abandoned buildings. Say over 50,000 buildings valued at 9.5 trillion naira wasting in Nigeria. Interesting. That's it for the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Well, coming back to Abuja right now, we have the Guardian, and you see what they're saying. 19.6% inflation. More people become poor. Experts warn. I think we've already focused quite a bit on that particular story. Defies interest rate hike. Rattles analysts. Surges to 19.6%, highest since 2005. Figures reflection of more scary future. That's someone speaking. We don't know who is. Okon, civil servants most hit. Purchasing power very weak. Suspend telecoms beverage tax, says Owaleke. Rein in 19.7 trillion naira ways and means loans to federal government. Galloping inflation, recipe for recession. Higher unemployment, economists insist. Page 6 is where you'll find details for that. You also find a number of other stories. This one is political. PDP crisis. You can't decide for a presidential candidate, says McCarthy. Page 6 is where you find details. At the bottom, they have a number of stories which you might have seen elsewhere, but let's take a look at this one. Niger Delta leader Adjube alleges neglect of Ondo mandate areas by NDDC. Page 7. Sometimes it's difficult to remember that Ondo is a part of the NDDC, but they are a part of it. And Fulani elite disown Miyetti Allah's statement on Obi. Did you see the initial statement by Miyetti Allah?
Yes, I think a day or so ago.
We find another group now coming up to disown that particular statement. Do you think we'll see more and more of things like this?
Yeah, we are heading to an election, so, all these groups that are based at the capital cities of the state will spring up to get one or two political favors. Actually, they are not really, to me, representing the hardest. Yeah, they are in Abuja, or Lagos, or
That's the Miyetti Allah.
Miyetti Allah, of course. It's an elite urban thing, that moving from one. Look at it this way. If Obi may reach out to them, they will speak another language. And more groups, even apart from the Miyetti Allah, they have the Makban. So there are so many of them.
Yes, so the Makban is actually Miyetti Allah as well. But there's Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, and then there's Miyetti Allah Kauta Hori. I think Kauta Hori was the one that issued the statement, the offending statement, and they have actually been issuing statements that have been causing quite a bit of offense. Don't forget that the governor of Benue State, is always taking up an issue with Miyetti Allah Kauta Hori. But that story for you will be on page 45 of the Guardian newspapers. I think that we can leave it there. Look who's here.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, yeah, so perhaps we should just go ahead and jump to the next one, which is the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Also a bit of politics, which you've spoken about, some of the headlines you highlighted, but it's PDP. Atiku holds rally in Yola. Wike's allies meet in Port Harcourt. Odele's birthday overshadows anticipated meeting. I've not resigned, no plan to do so, says Ayu. Oyinlola tipped to be Atiku's campaign DG, giving Wike chairmanship slot will solve crisis, Senator Okun. Wike won't leave PDP, he's a principled politician, Dele Momodu. So yeah, much as to say the crisis in PDP is not new, but sometimes when you look at all of these dynamics, even though it's not new, does that mean that we can't expect something new from this seeming fracas, if we could call it that?
Yes, like the Rivers governor, what he is doing, he lost out at the PDP primaries. So, and he's an outgoing governor. He is not coming to the Senate. So, all these things are happening. What are his plans?
So, is that significant?
Very, very.
If he was coming to the Senate?
Yes. It's a retirement, if I use that word, retirement home for most of our outgoing governors. After 8 years, I won't go back to my village. I have to come to Abuja and be a senator. Maybe some of them, there is a senator, former governor. He left the Southeast since 2007. He's still at the Senate. You even hardly see him on TV. Until recently, now he's making all manner of statements and whatever. So it's a retirement home. And Wike, like his other colleagues, okay, what is for me after leaving office? You need to have one political appointment or the other, at least as even security, because you don't know who is taking over from you. The EFCC, ICPC, all these kind of things. So it's a protection kind of thing. So it's actually expected.
Unfortunately, that it turns out that's the way it comes across, as it is a retirement for them. Wow. Yes, you also have commented on this statement. This leads to at the bottom, Fulani Group disowns Miyetti Allah's statement on Obi, where you say, if he reaches out to them, they'll sing a different tune. Sounds like politicians. But look at this. Blackout looms as electricity workers begin strike tomorrow. Picket TCN today. We know that ASU strike is ongoing, and then another strike upon us. So what can we make of this?
It's actually unfortunate because we are grappling with even blackouts now. So if they down tool now, it will be total blackout. You understand? And I just read sometimes, was it yesterday, that the federal government has invested 2.9 trillion on power since 2013 when it was privatized. But what is the generation capacity? Average of 4,000. How much do we even have? So actually, it's a source of concern. It will worsen the situation now. Look at the inflation. Okay, by the time they down tool, I hope, like the experts are saying, from Sri Lanka to Sierra Leone, you start with SS, Sri Lanka, Sierra Leone. I don't know if you look at the alphabetical, Sri Lanka is farthest, but Sierra Leone is closer to us. And because of what? Inflation.
Well,
cost of,
not far from Abuja here, this happened. Gunmen invade Kogi market, kill one, abduct another, demand 20 million naira ransom. It sounds like fiction, but wow. Sometimes, you see these headlines, you just wonder if they're beginning to invade markets and abducting people. So
it's time for marketers too, people in the market to have their own vigilante.
20 million naira ransom for marketers.
From market women and men.
How do they?
When you say marketers, it sounds like oil marketers.
Sorry, market women.
And I think I caused that, so. But yes, from simple market people, quite a lot to wrap your head around. Let's leave it here for Vanguard newspapers.
And flip to the leadership newspaper. And Mr. Abdallah, I'm going to have to put you on the spot here as an editor. Look at that lead headline. PDP crisis deepens. Ayo calls Wike's bluff. Says he has 4-year tenure. I don't know. Would you say that on the podium, that's exactly what he did? Or it's just the editor's perspective to the story?
Jeff, I think if the editor's perspective to the story, they want a biting headline for clickbait, it attracts even your attention, Mr. Ayo, so it's a clickbaiting system used by the editors, particularly when, the story is everywhere. Almost all the newspapers have the story on the front page. So the editor needs to look different by dramatizing his headline. But by and large, I don't think that the PDP chairman will call the Rivers governor's bluff just like that, as they say, No, sure, yeah.
Abdallah, thank you for your time this morning.
Okay, thank you very much.
We're back in a moment, everyone. Stay with us.